people, welcome back to my channel. I put Vaseline under my eyes and literally all over my face. Vaseline is the best stuff in the entire world. Like, it's beautiful, and I know that there's rumors going on about how it causes cancer. I don't know, maybe it does, but it's really nice and wonderful for my skin. This right here, actually, I put like vitamin C serum that I made, mind you, from my vitamins on here, and that's why it has like a darkish tint, but the skin itself isn't that dark. Anyway, today I figured we'd go through a little bit of a day in the life of a music therapist. Now, unfortunately, I cannot actually bring you guys to work. I can't film. So I have sessions that I did, like music therapy sessions, individual and group, that I, of course, recorded and used for educational purposes. I have a couple that I created for personal development purposes, and I think continuing ed, possibly, I used one for. I do remember I did use one for an audition at one point as well. But the problem is that I can't broadcast these things. I don't have permission to, just because of where they were located and like who the client was. So even though I have these videos, unfortunately I can't show them to you. I also am not allowed to bring you guys to work, unfortunately. But I figured that I'd try my best to show you what a day in the life looks like. And I have schedules here for two different locations, and I figured that we go through them together, so that way this is the best way I could possibly show you a day in the life when you're working at a facility. Obviously, if you're freelance, that's different. If you're working for an agency, independent contractor, that's again going to be different. Sometimes, like when I worked in hospice, I was full-time, but still, like, full-time, your schedule was sort of all over the place. So these two schedules that I'm about to show you, they're both, well, one is hospital, like specific, I'll show you like which one's which, but like one is a specific specialized hospital, small specialized hospital, not like a general hospital. They're only open to a certain population. And then the other one is a rehab facility. Moral of the story is that one is my favorite place of all time that I talk and rant and rave about in my videos. And then the second one is my least favorite place that, again, I rant and rave about in my videos. So you'll get to see the schedule firsthand and see what I'm actually talking about. Let me think if there's anything else before we move on. Oh, each day is about an 8-hour shift, okay? That's important as well. So why don't I dive in? So this is my favorite place of all time, my internship. I blocked out all of the names, but then like this way you can kind of see. I just have to double check to make sure. I think there's one more thing I have to block out. All right. Okay, now you can see. It looks on the sort of bare side. I don't really, it wasn't that bare when I did it, but I'll explain it to you guys. So like here it was, this was at my internship. The beautiful, lovely, wonderful specialized hospital. The shifts were 8 hours except for Wednesday, obviously, but every other day was pretty much an 8-hour day, just to give you guys a heads up. So at this specific hospital, this is how it was kind of organized. So on Sundays I had 2 music therapy groups, and then during, so I had 2 music therapy groups. Somebody is calling me. So I have 2 different therapy groups, and then a leisure group because it was Sunday. And with the music therapy groups, we had goals, even though it was on a Sunday, so that might be different depending on the location. And then during this time, like, it looks like there's a lot of time here, but actually during this time we prepped, planned, and reassessed for this group, and we had lunch, because we did the same thing for both groups. So if something didn't go right in this group, that's when we planned, prepped, reassessed, got everything together, had lunch, talked, unwind, and then we went to the next group. This time went by pretty fast, to be honest. And then this time, we prepped and set up. The groups were already planned on Thursday, which I'll get to in a second. These two groups, I co-led for a short period of time, and then I ran them on my own. So, yeah, there you go. And then during this time, this was like when I did notes for all three groups, and there was I think it was 5, 5, and 10, but then again, the 10 for the leisure group, it was me, and then we had 3 like staff that were educated and creative arts, recreation staff. So it wasn't like there weren't any like CNAs, or there were CNAs, there were aides, but the people running the group, it was me and 3 other capable staff to run the group, if that makes sense. Not that a CNA is not capable, it's just that they're responsible. Like, a CNA and a personal caretaker is responsible solely for the client that they're paired with. So you can't really ask them to lead the group, or like, hey, I need more paper, can you go get it? Like, you can't ask them that because they're responsible for the client. So that's important to mention. Mondays, I remember Mondays being pretty darn busy, but I guess, I don't know, looking at this, it doesn't look that busy. But what ended up happening was, yeah, we had a morning meeting. And wait, what time does this? Yeah, 9. That's what time I got there. Or I guess I got there around 8:30. And then we had a morning meeting. I had an individual session. And then prep plan for the group session. And then I did notes. And usually on this day, I did notes and annual reports. This was a lot. I guess this was a lot of catching up note time, now that I think about it. Because I remember Mondays being pretty crazy. But looking at the schedule, it looks like pretty bland. Tuesdays was one of the busier days. And you do have to keep in mind that this isn't written down on the schedule, but like every session was sort of planned 2 to 3 days before. So for example, my Monday sessions were planned on Wednesday. Okay, the Wednesday sessions were planned on Monday, like that. So, yeah, so that's also what happened on Monday. Well, actually, no, I didn't plan Wednesdays I planned Wednesdays on Mondays, but Wednesday I had a co-treat, so I wasn't able to complete the planning process. But anyway, moving on. So, yeah, so Tuesday, yet again, morning meeting. I had supervision, which is really important. This is planning, this was planning for one of the sessions. It must have been the Thursday session, because like I said, it was 2 days before. Lunch, and then we had our choir rehearsal. So usually this was the time. Look at how much time that is. That like the staff, like we prepped and planned for the choir rehearsal. So, and that's wonderful. That's why I'm pointing it out. Look at how much time the staff had to prep for the choir rehearsal. Like this should be like taken into consideration. What time was this? Was 2 o'clock to 4. So we had 2 hours every week to prep for choir. To prep for an hour's worth of choir. That's like really, really important and should be emphasized. Moving forward, Thursdays, wait, no, this was Tuesday. Then Wednesday. Wednesdays were pretty crazy because they were the long days. So morning meeting, co-treat. So with this co-treat, like I said, I planned for my portion of the co-treat on Monday, and then I ran it through with my co-treat person on Tuesdays. I must have done it like around that time when we ran through it. Then we had our department meeting. That's always important, right? And then during this time, I planned for Monday, right? Because Wednesday, you planned for Monday. Sometimes then we had a planning for Thursday. Then after this part, sometimes here, we planned for Sunday. Because again, sometimes Sunday was a co-treat, sometimes it wasn't. And then I had an individual session, and then we had a leisure group in the evening. So this was a leisure group, and this was a leisure group, and then everything else was leisure groups. You're not focused on reaching objectives. You're just focused on more entertainment, more pleasure. Whereas, and then like you do other activities like you don't have to do music, but you could do art if you really wanted to. I did a lot of nail painting ones, I love painting my nails. That kind of stuff. So you could do music if you wanted to, like name that tune, but you don't have to. And we did open mic, so we did karaoke this night. So we did do a music leisure activity. Okay, so and then I planned during here for Sunday. Then Thursday, we had a morning meeting. Again, prepped for our relaxation groups because these two were both a co-lead. Then this was what was EMT? Environmental music therapy. I hated doing this, just to let you all know. Like literally we had to play in the hallway and kind of like absorb what was going on in the hallway and like play, and I hated it because I literally felt like I should just leave a cup out and get tipped. You know what I mean? Like I felt like a street performer, but it actually made me a really good musician. Like now, if people ask me to play piano at parties, well, I can just randomly play piano at parties because of my experience with this category. So it's something to keep in mind. We had an intern seminar where we learned like new activities, and usually that lasted a little bit longer than what it's showing here. Then of course prep for lunch, prep for relaxation, and then MIDI choir was when we used no, I'm just kidding. but we had the switches, and you program the switches. This took a lot of planning. Like, I honestly I didn't talk about when we planned for MIDI choir, but yeah, it's when you use the switches and you program it and you kind of organize like guitar. Honestly, this internship, Metheny Medical and Educational Center internship is the bomb, best internship. And I will say that they really taught me how to prep for a MIDI choir, how to prep for a bell choir, because I didn't know any of that stuff prior. But anyway, so the point that I'm trying to make is, yeah, we had space for lunch and stuff, but a lot of that time was taken up with session planning for other activities. I didn't have time to do notes like any of these days for the most part, because a lot of it was prep. And when you prep, especially co-treating, you have to make sure that the other person has like time. And for the most part, my people that I was co-treating with like early in the week had time later in the week, so my notes these days often got pushed by the wayside. So that's why on Sunday and Monday I did most of my notes. Sometimes I even stay late on Tuesdays to do notes, or stay late on Thursdays to do notes. So that's my internship schedule, best place on the face of the earth. And I do want to point this out because a lot of times, even though I had breaks for lunch and like breaks for session planning, I didn't get a chance to eat lunch every day, and I didn't get a chance to do notes every day. And there were some days that I didn't get any downtime. And then there were some days, you know, when I got a lot of downtime, like on Mondays. But for some reason, like just the way the schedule was laid out, I felt like it was very nice. Even on the crazier days, I still felt like okay, because there was like a calmer day to follow up. And every intern schedule is a little bit different. Every music therapist schedule at this location was a little bit different, just because of, you know, who their patients were and stuff like that. As you can see, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 group sessions, and then only 2 individuals. If I was on staff, I'd have like a ton more. Okay, so just keep that in mind. This was an intern's schedule, and it was the perfect schedule. Just saying. All right, now we're gonna move on to my least favorite site. Look at this madness. Jesus Christ. Okay, so this is my least favorite site. I'm not going to give any names, but y'all know who I'm talking about. Okay, so just like, don't pay attention to the green written on the side for a second. So when I first got hired, let me actually just like turn this over. Okay, so when I first got hired, this is kind of what our typical schedule looked like. Okay, so we came in at 8, and then we started the day at 9. Like, patients came in at 9. And then you know, it's Monday through, this one was Monday through Friday, whereas this one was Sunday through Thursday. But this was Monday through Friday, and then we had, when I first got hired, we had 1 session every hour, and then there was lunch right here. But like I wrote here, right, working lunch, so y'all know that, yeah, the lunch is here, but it wasn't necessarily a break. And then you can kind of see the variety of activities. This is just a disaster. Look at this. Like, disaster. Like, I'm sorry, but like, how can you expect patients to go from like a game, dice baseball, to like summer leisure alphabet, which is like, you know, a game, but like more of an English game, to bowling, back to activity, right? And then to drumming. Like that, this is not therapeutic to nobody. Like, I'm just saying, you can't expect patients to be jumping from activity to activity every hour, especially in this specific facility. They were traumatic brain injury, so their cognitive skills weren't that quick. They were very delayed at times. Certain patients had a faster cognitive approach than other patients, but this schedule didn't take into effect the people that actually needed the leisure. And that's the thing that I think bothered me the most, is that this, like, everything was go, 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 as you can see. And there's some patients with traumatic brain injury do need constant stimulation, but not all. And that's not taken into consideration here. But you can kind of see, yeah, this was when I first started. So clearly we had 1 group every hour, and sometimes we would have like a longer group if it was an outing, or like in this case, it was a party. Gee, I wonder what 30-year-old person I shared the office with came out with this brilliant idea for a leisure group. I'm throwing shade. Y'all know who I'm talking about. What uneducated individual came up with this stupid idea? Not that that's stupid, but it's not. It's leisure. It's not therapeutic. And is it supposed to be therapeutic? Well, I don't know, because the sessions are all over the place. Now moving on, like I said, this is when I first started, right? So it came in at 8, clocked in, and even to this day, you can't expect your employees to be like ready to go right when they clock in. Like, if you have an intern, if you're entry level and it's your first job, you know, if you're, you know, clinical placement, medical school, like anything that's like I guess, more graded wise or more competitive, they can jump right in. They should be jumping right in. But like for the most part, people aren't ready to go right when they clock in. That's something that you just have to like deal with. So clearly you clocked in, right? But you're not really ready to go. And plus you got a session plan for what's to come. Okay, and then, so then you have a full day worth of activities, and like I said, a working lunch. And like I told you guys before, there were about 20 patients, 15 to 20 at this, no, I'm sorry, 10 to 15 at this point in a group. So all hands had to be on deck, right? And then you have from 3 to 4, because we got out at 4, to do notes and session planning. Like, that's not enough time. And like how am I, I'm sorry, but like how am I supposed to do notes for, and the 15 to 20 patients, it wasn't the same 15 to 20 patients, it was different. So like, how am I supposed to do notes for all these people and session plan in 1 hour? Technically, if I did clock in right away and like was ready to go, again, that's still not acceptable. You can't session plan and do notes for all of those patients, even in a 2-hour window. Wait until you see what ended up happening. So like I said, that was about 10 to 15 patients, right? Then, see, look, I'm being real shady. But if you kind of look here, because what ended up happening was when I first started, it was 1 group every hour, and then it broke into 2 groups every hour. And that's when we had about 20 patients a group, right? So again, let's do the math for a second, shall we? So if we're doing Monday, for example, and we have 2 groups every hour, right? And there's 10 patients in each group because there's 20 patients in general. Sometimes, like when we did 2 groups, this was another thing, it wasn't split right down the middle. The patients got to decide. So sometimes you'd be stuck with like 3 people, and sometimes you'd be stuck with like 15. And usually I was stuck with 15 because everybody loves music. Anyway, so then we would have 10, right? So if I was leading all 4 of these groups, I'd have 10, 20, 30, 40 patients a day to write notes on, which was pretty common when we were in the emergency room. I did see 30 to 40 patients a day. That's not necessarily the problem here, but the problem that I'm going to say is doing notes for 40 patients within an hour window and session planning for the following day. That's unacceptable. And in order to accomplish that goal, what I ended up doing was I ended up staying late, or sometimes I would come in early. But then again, like since this was both of these locations were nonprofits, but since this was a nonprofit, they like really tracked our hours because, you know, I was getting paid for this position, whereas like my internship, I wasn't getting paid. So if I stayed late, it just went into the whole, like, you have to complete 1,200 hours. So if I stayed late, then, you know, maybe I completed 1,220, you know? So, and that was fine, right? And then you get good recommendations and all that fun stuff. But at this position, I ended up getting in trouble, and I had to either work for free or not do it, so I didn't do it. But yeah, but this is literally ridiculous. Anyway, so we'll compare the 2. And like I said, I don't know how to like show you guys, but I'll just do like that. You can kind of see. Like, there's definitely more room to do notes and session plan. And again, one thing I did want to point out is the 2-hour staff rehearsal / co-lead / session plan for the choir. Whereas in this case, yes, I did choir here on Thursday, but where is my 2 hours of plan? Where is it? Because I don't see it. Anyway, before we go, I do want to point out something that's really important, especially in terms of your schedule, and that's this little form here. I kind of made stuff up writing on this, but as you can see, there's direct care and there's direct hours, indirect hours. This is how I kept track of my internship, and I did use this for my own interns, and I did use it at different locations. But as you can see, I kind of made these numbers up, but you're like 4 hours of direct care, 4 hours of indirect care, which would be note-taking session planning. 3 hours of direct care, 5 hours of note-taking session planning. So, and this is kind of how it really should be. Like, some hours you spend more time, again, I made these numbers up, but some hours you spend more time direct care, and some hours you spend more time indirect care doing notes, especially if notes are always necessary because that's how billing happens. So you do want to be effective with your note-taking time, and that's something that I learned in my internship. Like, I had to get all of my notes done mostly on Sunday and Monday, so, you know, I had to really focus during my note-taking time. But that was fine because, like, okay, then I knew I was doing direct care all the rest of the time, right? Whereas, like, in this situation, it was mostly, you know, direct care, and then there were only 2 hours worth of notes-taking time. Which that's ridiculous. Even when I worked in the emergency room, like, we got more time to do notes, and that was like the emergency room. So that's when I say I don't like direct care, I mean I don't like unrealistic direct care, okay? Because when I was in a more, you know, balanced position, when I worked in the emergency room, since the schedule was so, like, organized and structured in this way, like, sort of similar to this, a little different because, you know, but I mean, in the emergency room, I think I had a total of like 3.5 hours to do 40 patients worth of notes. And to be honest, like, I know that seems like, oh my God, like, that's a lot, you know, but compared to the horrible job placement, like 3 to 3.5 hours for 40 patients was, like, wonderful. You know, if you focus on the task, you can definitely do it, and you can still be alert. So that's the point. But the moral of the story is that you really want to kind of analyze this structure. And you do want to take into consideration how many hours you're spending directly, how many hours you're spending indirectly. You should be spending about 60 to 70% of the time direct, and 30 to 40% of the time indirect, especially in, you know, situations like this, long-term care, anything you have to write notes for or do reports for. But you need to know when you need to know when you're being taken advantage of, and that's the moral of the story here. So music therapy is a wonderful profession. It really is. Just make sure that you stick up for yourself and you know what's unfair and what's not, and go from there. Keep in mind, I want to say that this sheet is probably the most important one. It's great for when you're working, not just keeping track of your hours, but if you're working in any healthcare position and you do have direct care, indirect care, tracking it this way is the best way, and it will really show you the 60-40, 70-30 breakdown, and then how many hours you have to do notes and how to make that time most effectively. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed our conversation, and talk to you guys later. Bye!